Yeah. But then, then there was one. There was one that I think you wanted. It was, and it was truly the most annoying kind, where it was like, when I'm making a correctly spelled word with the wrong place to go. This.
Practicing right now with the Secretary of State. Me too. Here we are.
Well, Miss Mayor, I was trying to get. I was saying hello. My name is Sylvester. So I think I'm similar at some of our Orange Tiger Travis meetings and so I try to get everybody. So I feel like I've really earned my position on this commission, and there's no more of the city.
Why would I care?
Done those things. I have. Yeah, like if it was just going back.
I'm walking and I'm which makes me really yours is dead, yours is dead, and I don't even have mine. Hi, Dr. Stephanie. How are you? Okay. What do I have to
for 7 years, but yet you don't have every check base. A state station address. Why?
Please, Cindy.
Recording in progress.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That is so cute. Oh my God, I love this. Action. No. Don't even. I took a Wow, what a good idea. Wait, I gotta fold this better. So Lee did this. Huh? Oh, no, it wasn't about taxes. They were actually making the taxing less. This was about a monopoly. They were bailing out the jurisdictions, creating a monopoly. And you know, oh my gosh, these are so great. She's so talented. Okay, so she's here in the state. Yeah, so.
So it just means like the state has to pay private.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I don't think so.
Probably something like this. The Connecticut Commission. One of these like worked
Everybody could take their seats. Thank you.
For the fourth. Yep. Thank you. Or just help or some sort of. Okay, thank you. Just send me an email.
Okay. Good morning and welcome to the, I don't know, how many meetings have we had of this group? Anyway, we've been meeting since last year. This is the Commission on America 250. And a lot of work has been going on. I am Denise Merrill, former Secretary of the State and Chair of the Commission, and this is my Vice Chair, Jason Mancini. And I look forward to the meeting today. I have to say it's been a tumultuous time in the world since last we met in July. And it made me think this morning that this work is more needed than ever to recommit ourselves to the ideals of the founders of our country, and that's what we're doing here. So today we have some of the subcommittees have been meeting over this period of time, and we have some plans in place, and I'm very excited about everything that's going on. So thank you, first of all of you for your work on this. And again, thanks to Sally Whipple in the Old State House for having us in this wonderful building, which really, for me, embodies everything that's important about Connecticut's role in the founding of the country, and we hope we have a lot more use of the old State House in the future. So thank you, Sally, once again, and thank you to your staff for being so welcoming to us. Okay, we'll start off with the approval of the minutes from the July 12th meeting, which should have been in your packets that were mailed to you. Any discussion about the minutes, any omissions, corrections? If not, can I have a vote? All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
I
Okay.
abstain, I was not there.
Oh, yes, you were not here. Okay, minutes are approved then. We do have some members that are online, I believe. Is that right, Sheldon?
Yes.
Okay, and they are there, and
We just can't see it.
yeah. Great. All right, first off this morning, we have a speaker who has come to us largely as a result of a lot of work we did on IDEA. We had a committee that worked earlier in our history as an organization. And his name is David Adams, and I think this is the first time we've had a speaker at one of our meetings, so I'm really looking forward to hearing about his work. He is from the Urban Assembly of New York City, and I'm going to ask Steve Hernandez to introduce him. He is the one that located the speaker for us. So Steve, go ahead.
Well, thank you so much, Madam Secretary. It's a real honor to be able to introduce a friend, a thinker, and really a doer. It's interesting when the thinkers and doers come together in one person, because it really creates for a powerful mix. And who we have here is someone that I have a lot of respect for. His name is David Adams. He is the Chief Executive Officer of the Urban Assembly in New York. The Urban Assembly is a school support agency that develops learning tools and programs that enhance student growth and school performance. Their mission is to advance student social and economic mobility by improving public education. You know, David started at the Urban Assembly in 2014 as a Director of Social and Emotional Learning, where he created the Resilient Scholars Program, a unique approach to integrating SEL into curriculum and classroom practices across the UA network. He eventually was named in 2022 one of the Crane's 40 Under 40 honorees, and in 2021 he received the Champion of Equity Award from the American Consortium for Equity in Education. He sits on the board on the Collaborative on Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning out of Chicago. We are a collaborating state with the Collaborative, so that's part of the way that I met David. He's also an author of the Educator's Practical Guide to Emotional Intelligence and a co-author of the textbook Challenges to Integrating Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Programs in Organizations. He also happens to be a civil affairs officer in the Army Reserve and holds a doctorate in education psychology from Fordham University. At any given moment, you might find David in Danbury, Connecticut, where he serves as a reservist as well, or also serving some of our schools with some of the programming that he does out of New York. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome David Adams to our meeting.
Thank you so much, Stephen. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for hosting me. I want to thank the Connecticut 250th Commission for hosting me. Thank you directly, Stephen, as the Executive Director for Executive Director on Commission for Women, Children, Seniors, Equity, and Opportunity for the invitation. And I also do want to thank every Connecticut resident, past, present, and future, who has committed themselves to furthering our American experiment. Now, we are gathered here today to honor America's 250th anniversary, the oldest constitutional democracy in the history of the world. Now, you may be wondering, Steve has a lot of contacts. Why did he bring an educator to reflect on the promise of democracy and its relationship to the state of Connecticut? Well, first, I'm not just any educator. As Steve mentioned, just this past weekend, I spent Friday to Monday at the Veterans Memorial Armed Forces Center in Danbury, Connecticut, as a team chief for Civil Affairs Team 4, Bravo Company 411 Civil Affairs Battalions, Mad Hatters. As a civil affairs officer, one of my specialties is in the idea of leveraging social contract theory to enhance governance structures by analyzing how services, processes of exchange, and values connect leaders to their followers. Speaking of values, my specialty in education is not literacy, numeracy, or even career and technical education, but the social and emotional development of our youth and the role schools play in social emotional learning. Who our children are is as important as what they know. Lastly, even educators who aren't in the Army or focused on social and emotional learning still have a lot to say about the nature of the American experiment. In fact, it was Neil Postman, an education philosopher, in his book, The End of Education, who noted that every experiment begins with a question. The first of which, pertaining to our democracy and our experiment in our democracy, goes like this. Is it possible to have a coherent, stable culture that allows the greatest possible freedom of religious and political thought and expression? End quote. Now, let's break this down. Coherent, united as or forming a whole, stable, sane and sensible, not easily upset or disturbed. Freedom, the power or right to act, speak, or think as one wants without hindrance or restraint. Revisiting that question one more time, is it possible to have a coherent, stable culture that allows the greatest possible freedom of religious and political thought and expression? And this question pulled and pulls at the American fabric. Compromises with names like 3/5, Missouri, in 1877 so often cohered our emerging nation on the back of its Black citizens and enslaved peoples to mollify these strains. Each compromise more clearly defining who the we was and we the people in order to form a more perfect union, until we the people, led by leaders of vision and imagination in the face of violent repression, asked a new question, sparking a new experiment. Is it possible to have a coherent, stable culture made up of people of different languages, religions, traditions, and races? Now, I mentioned that my expertise was not in numeracy, but I do know how to solve for X. And this new question reflects a much more ambitious X to solve for. In light of our 250th anniversary as a nation, how might we solve for a we the people that forms a more perfect union across language, religion, tradition, and race? And how to make that solution coherent and stable? And truly, this is a question worthy of a people from whose greatest patriots, like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., reminds us that we've refused to believe that the bank of justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in this great vault of opportunity of the nation. And so we've come to cash this check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. He reminds us that they came to this hallowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now, because even at 250 years old, age ain't nothing but a number. In fact, the technical definition of aging is not about symbolic representations of the Earth's rotation around the sun, but the impact of the accumulation of a wide variety of molecular and cellular damage over time. Yes, aging is about our ability to repair damage to the building blocks of our society. Now, I'm not one to speak poorly of advancing years. Wisdom, perspective, temperance could all be the results of aging. But I am more invested in the idea of aging well. My grandmother, Elma Adams, aged 97, plays the organ every Sunday at church, holds lively conversations with her great-grandkids, and just last year went camping in the Canadian wilderness. By aging well, she reminds me that to age well as a society, we must repair damage, maintain health, and flourish just as she has. So what are these sources of damage? And how will we come together to address them to continue the American experiment? First, you've heard of free radicals and oxidants damaging cells. Let's talk about the role of relative truths damaging our democracy. Quoting Neil Postman once again, in his vast study of democracy in America, de Tocqueville concluded that all of our political problems end up in the courts. Had there existed a public school system when he wrote, he might have added that all of America's social problems end up in school. Continuing all, he writes on that, quote, Americans rely on our schools, even more than our courts, to express a vision of who we are, which is why we're constantly arguing over what happens in schools, end quote. So how might our schools prepare our future citizens to repair the damage accumulating to our democracy? The difference between an education that authorizes truth and one that reduces the likelihood of error in thinking is the difference between who we are and who we want to be. You see, to relieve us of our error in judgment, error in inferences, error in skills and prejudices, is to equip our students to seek truth. not a relative truth flailing in the wind, sensitive to its most forceful advocate. No, the truth of ourselves and the world around us with a capital T. And just as truing a wheel is a balance between tension and flexibility, incrementally brought into balance against each other, there are, in fact, more or less just and stable ways of governance brought into their own balance against each other and our history. There are, in fact, more or less ways of coherence that are effective or not through the common good. The answers to these questions, to these experiments, are not relative. They are objective statements of fact. And it is our job as educators to equip our students to pursue them. Our schools represent this first exposure to how our society thinks about justice, community, and problem solving. Our schools not only refine the mind, but teach expectations to our young ones about how society works and how we should work together to improve society. So to elevate our schools is to elevate our youth to take their place in our nation. And this is how we will endow our descendants with the institutions and dispositions to pursue the American experiment. Truth is a North Star of this journey. Next, we need to believe. No scientist can claim 100% certainty around the outcomes of an experiment. By definition, an experiment is a scientific procedure undertaken to make a discovery or test an hypothesis. We are testing the idea that a stable, coherent, multiracial, and multi-ethnic democracy is possible. Thomas Edison tried 2,000 different materials in search of a filament for a light bulb. When none worked satisfactorily, his assistant complained, "All of our work is in vain. We have learned nothing." Edison replied confidently, "Oh, we have come a long way and we have learned a lot. We now know that there are 2,000 elements which we cannot use to make a good light bulb." We know that racial segregation is not a path to democracy. We know that public education for all students is. We know that excluding half of the population from public life is not a path to democracy. We know that ensuring all Americans can participate in governance is. Now, these myth-fires do not mean that our work to perfect our union is in vain. Instead, they reflect the fact that progress is indeed work. Imagine what the world would be like if after 1,999 tries, Thomas Edison decided to give up on his dream for lifting society out of darkness. If after Selma, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had decided to give up on his dream for America, our dream. That after 7 years and the loss of 3 astronauts, America herself gave up on JFK's ambition to land on the moon. It is the belief that our country is capable of great things that gives us the will to rise above our darkest tendencies. We must believe. Lastly, narratives matter. The stories we tell ourselves about ourselves ground our sense of belonging, our willingness to communicate, our understanding of the we in the we the people. According to ChatGPT, we is a pronoun that typically refers to a group composed of oneself and one or more other individuals who are involved in the same action, event, or situation. It denotes a sense of togetherness or inclusivity, indicating that the speaker is part of a collective entity or sharing a common perspective with others. The artificial intelligence continues that we is a pronoun used to refer to a group of people, including the person speaking and one or more others, to talk about a collective experience, action, or thought. It implies inclusivity and represents the collective identity or involvement of individuals. And what is the narrative employed to create a we the people? What is the narrative we use to understand our more perfect union? What is the glue that allows us to be, quote, joined in common purpose or interest? These are the questions that our statesmen and women are left to grapple with, and that our schools are asked to cohere around. Indeed, narratives drive our sense of we. And so I come back to these key themes of the 250th, a democracy tapped with an experiment to cohere different languages, religions, traditions, and races, while racing against the effects of age and damages to our institutions, with a people committed to greatness, willing to stand up to address these questions of who we are and who we want to be, unafraid of the burdens of leadership, ready to face the trials of fare and to produce something worthwhile for generations to come. people worthy of the ancestors who delivered us and attuned to our responsibilities for our descendants and American people, united by a narrative soon to be discovered that coheres our we to each other and bonds us to e pluribus unum, while inspiring the model of the United States Army. This will defend. A we that recognizes the fault of our past while casting optimism to the promise of our future. One that reminds us to sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us, while inspiring us to sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. That this experiment in democracy is part of a collective endeavor to improve who we are as humanity. A we that compels us to recognize that if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. A we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our prosperity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America, aged 250 years old. And so I stand before you asking for a recommitment to this American notion, this American nation, this idea of a collective good that is knowable and grounded in justice for all. I ask on behalf of 250 years of these United States to continue this experiment and inspire others to do the same. I ask you to remind each citizen of this great state of Connecticut that citizenship is best understood as a verb, an action, state, or occurrence. And by forming the main part of a sentence, it is, in today's parlance, the main character. When we will achieve this, our children will know that we chose them. By preserving our institutions that uplift the common good, we choose them. By choosing to solve for all of our citizens, we choose them. By believing that we are still capable of great things, we leave them with an investment worthy of our belief in the narratives that tell us who we are. We are an American people. And so, to the Commission, to the state of Connecticut, I leave you with an answer to the experiment Postman asked us so many years ago. Is it possible to have a coherent, stable culture made of a people of different languages, religions, traditions, and races? And the answer is yes. The time is now, and we are the ones we've been waiting for. So let's show them what we're made of. On behalf of the Urban Assembly, I thank you for the time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David, for that inspiration. It's just what we need right now, and I'm proud of the work we're doing, and this really elevates it, in my mind at least, to where it needs to be. We have a big task ahead of us, and it's to accomplish exactly what you've been talking about. And it's a weighty job, but I think it's doable, and your speaking makes me think that that's possible. So thank you. Any questions, people, comments? Anybody? All right, thank you again for your time. It was wonderful and a great launch for our meeting today. Thank you, David. Thanks again.
Thank you, Chairman.
All right, bye-bye. All right, and thank you, Steve, for bringing him to us. He's obviously, the state of New York and the schools he's working with are lucky to have him, obviously. And I'd be really interested to see more about his work in schools. And you say he's working in
fact, here in Connecticut. So I think what we might do is I'll introduce you more formally when he's here in Connecticut, and then we can do maybe a tour of some of the work that he's doing in our schools.
That would be really interesting. Yeah, and maybe we can incorporate them into some of the things we're doing.
That's great.
Danbury, the whole Danbury School
So
System.
in Danbury, it's his service in the military, but he is actually in various towns around the state of Connecticut doing the work that they do for the Urban Assembly.
Wonderful. All right, well, thank you very much. That was very inspirational. Okay, we are now going to move on to the work of the day. We're starting with a national/regional update because, as you know, there is a national commission. There are commissions in various states around the country. So there was a conference that was attended. I think, Jason, you went to the conference. So I'm going to turn this over to my vice chairman.
Thanks, Denise. Yes, CTH staff and I attended the national conference for the American Association of State and Local History. Commission members as well, Amherst Williams, were there. I'm going to actually, for the sake of brevity, I'm going to turn it over to Scott, who's actually involved in the organization. So Scott Wands can provide a brief overview of our time there.
I'll be very brief. I just want to say that it was great to have, I think, 4 people from the commission or staff at Connecticut Humanities attending the conference. And ASLH is really still taking leadership role in convening the states and having conversations that are important and doing the work that's going to help us all. I know you've all, as commission members, have received the field guide previously, and many of the themes that ASLH helped provide have become the themes for us in Connecticut. The next big project to be aware of that they're doing is they have an RFP out right now. They're going to be creating a handbook for smaller history organizations to have low impact, low cost, low impact on the staff programs that organizations can bring back to them and run across the country. So it'll be something for us to be aware of in Connecticut, to be disseminating, to be helping organizations figure out ways that they can be programming. And we don't have to do that in Connecticut because ASLH is helping us do that as a nation. Won't say a lot else, but I think that's the big thing to know. That's coming. Work is supposed to begin in November, and then want to have this in early 2024 for use for all of us across the nation.
Okay, any questions, comments? All right, thank you, Scott. Next, we'll talk about the state rebranding and commission logo. And for this, I'll turn it over to Cindy Tolosa, who is now administering the commission work at the Humanities Council.
Hey everyone. So Joe, who is the designer of the logo, will be joining us in just a minute. But I will start off by sharing on the screen. We're running ahead of schedule, which is rare. So I will share on the screen some of the logo concepts that we have. I will say that this was all inspired by the new rebranding of Connecticut. And so this ties directly into the new Connecticut state brand. And we are very excited to have worked together with Anthony and his team, and Joe Cunningham, who is part of the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection.
First, just to go back a little bit, the state rebranding, I just heard it on the radio this morning for the first time, so I just want to make sure everybody understands what that is. It's very exciting. It's a new effort, I think, by DECD and the governor, I'm sure. So just to let you know, that's what that's all about. There is a new rebranding, and I won't spoil the surprise if nobody has heard it yet. But are you going to talk about that, Cindy?
I'm happy to. Joe, I know that I see that you're on right now, so feel free to, you can take over the screen and start talking whenever.
Okay.
Joe?
Good morning. Good morning, commission members. Thanks for having me here today. I'm happy to walk through the America 250 logo. Cindy, if you wouldn't mind just controlling the PDF, you can, switch the slide when you get a second. Okay, so for those of you that are familiar with the new Connecticut brand, that's partially what we're seeing here. And what this logo concept does is it pulls the font and the typeface from the UCT branding and integrates it directly into the text America 250. So I think this is a very, very simple, clean and clear approach that will, easily communicate how, Connecticut is part of this and how it has played a significant role in the history of America. So what we're looking at here would be the primary logos. The version on the top integrates the entire Connecticut logo into it. And the lockup that we're seeing there is the exact lockup that is the new Connecticut logo. So it retains the exact proportions and standards from that brand. And the version below it just incorporates the icon mark of that. Next slide. And what we're looking at here are a couple alternate versions where we can integrate some of American flag elements into that C icon. For those of you that are familiar with that brand, the logo is very much dynamic, and it is designed to bring in various elements within that shape. So here, I've explored ways to do that, and what we have here is very much the most distilled down, simple way that we can say America without it feeling like Texas or Puerto Rico. I was playing around with adding in stripes, but it seemed to conflict with that negative space that is the T within that logo. So I feel this is a very nice balance of simplicity where you still get the America feel right off the bat, but it isn't busy or distracting. And I have one more thing to share with you all. That is on the next slide. And what we see here is not a logo, but just an example of a visual treatment or a graphic style that we can use to kind of expand that brand. I would consider the logos we've seen before this to be, the logo. But this is a way that we can really, tell the story of Connecticut and America 250 by, using a very simple, iconic line drawing style, which actually is part of the new Connecticut brand as well. And what you see here are snapshots within, the numbers 250 that, represent various things about America's history or how Connecticut directly, integrated into the history of America. And these, this is very much just a concept. So the actual objects and items within here are very much just placeholder, but it's just to give you the concept and the idea of how we can kind of tell that story and, integrate whatever we want into these snapshots. That's what I have to share today. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Joe.
And we will continue to work with Joe and the Office of Marketing to refine these designs and then really create a full brand around the commission and our work that will continue to tie in with the idea of, actually, I'll leave it for the Marketing and Tourism Committee to put some more later. And then I'll send everybody a link to the new Connecticut branding information so that you can see how this ties into what the state launched yesterday. So it's all very timely.
I just want to acknowledge Joe and the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection for all of their hard work and contribution. They've been very willing partners and collaborators in all of this, along with Anthony and his team in marketing and tourism for the state. This has been a really exciting collaborative endeavor, knowing that they're going to partner with us and think through this with us. I'll get a little more into it in the Marketing and Tourism Subcommittee, but it's a brand new day in Connecticut, and I think we're all really excited to be thinking together and collaborating in this way.
Thank you, Joe. Those are very interesting. I liked all of them, honestly. I particularly like the red one, but that's just, I'm throwing in my vote right now.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
I think the upshot too, Cindy, correct me if I'm wrong, or Joe, we can use all of these in different ways for different purposes.
Right. Yeah, it's great.
Wonderful.
Okay. So now, moving on, we have a couple of approvals that we need to look at. We need to look at some of the work by one of the committees. The first one is the commission bylaws. We have worked for months on these, and we have a version to present to you today that needs approval by the group. Ariane, do you want to go through anything on the bylaws? I see your name here.
Well, I would just say, yes, this is the main task that the governance committee has been working on over the summer and the past many months. I definitely want to recognize and thank Steve Hernandez and Michael Werner for all their work, really the great legal minds behind the bylaws. We did look, thanks to Cindy, we were able to look at a few examples from other states to get kind of an initial sense, and then we really shaped them around the ideals and ideas of our commission here in Connecticut. So I guess I would ask if there are any questions, and I might turn it over to Michael and Steve to answer those questions.
Or if there's anything else you'd like to add about.
Yeah.
Highlights or points that strike you as important for everyone to know? Anything in particular? I think they're fairly standard bylaws in general. There were very few questions because this is a small group, and so I think we're generally using generally accepted practices like Robert's rules and so forth. I don't think, is there anything else you can think of that's...
No, I just want to thank everyone who was part of that subcommittee. It was very much a collaborative process, and I think that what's nice is that there's some work being done by some of our peer states that have kind of set a good groundwork that we can look at what their best practices were and modify it for our own use here in Connecticut. And so it was a great process, and I thank everyone for their collaborative efforts.
Okay, great. Okay, do we have any questions about the bylaws, anyone?
I found a couple of typos, but I don't necessarily want to waste the time on that. Can I just send them afterwards?
Okay, yes, that'd be fine, as long as we know there's a couple of things that might come
Tiny
in.
little things on the whole.
If they're just typos, then it won't affect our approval here today of the text of the bylaws. So we'll just put that on the table. Okay, if there are no further discussion, can I have a motion to approve the commission bylaws? So moved. All right, second? All right, seconded by Doug. Okay, all those in favor of acceptance of the bylaws, say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions, opposition? All right, with that, I would reflect in the record that the commission bylaws passed unanimously. The second approval we need is for the event approvals process and criteria. We had some discussion about this at the last meeting, the role of the commission in any kind of acceptance or endorsement of events. And so we've come up with a statement about how we will handle events, and I'll leave it to Cindy to explain to us what's here.
Yeah, so at our last meeting, we discussed in detail quite a few edits to this document, and those have been incorporated since then. I think at the end of the day, we are already starting to receive events that we're being asked to promote. And so before starting to do that promoting, I wanted to make sure that we had a process in place, kind of guidelines. We discussed using a Google form to have organizations that are submitting events kind of go through this list, make sure they understand what the commission guidelines are, and those were approved at our last meeting. So at this point, I think it's really just, unless we're more than welcome to discuss further, but if everybody is okay with what's here, approving this moving forward for being kind of the guideline for what events we'll be promoting as a commission.
I apologize for having one note that I wanted to see at the bottom of this document, the penultimate paragraph. Events should be nonpartisan in nature and may be reviewed for accuracy of historical interpretation. Of course, I totally agree with this. I worried that it suggested we may only review them for historical accuracy. So I just thought it should be, events should be nonpartisan in nature and historically accurate, because we already say that we may reconsider them. Look, we may review events for not being in line with any of the commission's values, not just for accuracy. So I didn't want it, it's read to me like a limiting statement. So it's a very small, I think totally in the spirit of the thing. In other words, events should be nonpartisan in nature and historically accurate, is my suggested edit.
Oh, and as opposed to maybe reviewed for accuracy.
Historically,
Right.
exactly.
I see. Okay, I would accept that as an amendment? Everybody in favor of that amendment? Anybody think it should be different? No? We're all, okay. So we'll accept that as an amendment. Can you read it as it now reads, Cindy?
So events should be nonpartisan in nature and historically accurate. The America 250 CT Commission may accept, reject, or reconsider a listing or partnership request in its sole discretion.
Okay. Any other amendments, corrections? Yes.
In the last paragraph, there was the word endorsed used. I know we had a conversation last time about endorsing versus promoting or listing. Did we determine that we are endorsing these events?
That is the implication here. Yes, but this is really about groups seeking to have an event endorsed. Means I take this to mean, and Cindy, correct me if I'm wrong, that these are the guidelines we would use in case we would endorse something. It doesn't mean we would necessarily endorse anything, but that if this came up, we would have the freedom to endorse something if we decided it was appropriate, right? Basically.
So I will say, I think that might have been a typo on my part, and it should say promoted, because we did go back and forth about the language between promoted and endorsed and kind of settled on promoting, not endorsing at this point. So I am okay amending that to groups and organizations seeking to have an event promoted by the commission shall be required to submit a description of the proposed.
I had forgotten that. Yes, Steve.
Yeah, and I think that's a smart move, because I think if you put a policy in about that even says endorsement, some people are gonna say, how do we do it?
Yeah.
So I think to clean that language up.
Okay.
Thanks for that catch, Deborah.
Yeah, Sally.
I was just wondering about the decision in the second to the last paragraph to say that they should be nonpartisan rather than will be nonpartisan.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
That it says that they should be nonpartisan, which sounds like more than a suggestion to me. But do we really want to leave that door open, or do we want to have things that are nonpartisan?
We have a legal opinion.
Yeah.
Observe it's the same word in the sentence before, so we should be consistent.
Shall and will are always confusing to me.
Right.
I would use the word shall
Shall
if we have a choice.
rather than should.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Let's use it in both
And
times, to be clear.
yeah.
The
Both
commission
times,
shall be
yes,
in line.
right,
and-
right. Yes, I think that's a very good change. Yes. Events shall be nonpartisan in nature and shall be reviewed
And historically accurate was our
for
amendment.
historical accuracy, right? Yes. Everybody okay with that change as well? Okay. I see agreement. Is there anybody who disagrees? Because there are people online, I know. Okay. All right, so that's a second change to the current wording, and that would be, Cindy, you want to read it because you're taking the notes here?
Perfect.
Yep.
So events shall be nonpartisan in nature and shall be historically accurate. So that is that sentence. And I'll go back. Groups and organizations seeking to have an event promoted by the commission shall be required to submit a description of the proposed event. ... So those are the last two changes we made.
Okay.
I think it could be events shall be nonpartisan in nature and historically accurate, just to get rid of the repetition of shall be.
That's fine.
Either works, to me.
So events shall be nonpartisan in nature and historically accurate.
It looks like you disagree with me,
Well,
so.
I'm thinking about that. I mean, shall be reviewed for historical accuracy. I mean, historical accuracy can be difficult to determine, I think.
But we got rid of the shall be reviewed for historical accuracy. Events shall be nonpartisan in nature and historically accurate. That was Andy's first edit.
Yes, right.
I just think that's a cleaner sentence.
Yeah, all right, okay.
Use a semicolon somehow?
Let's make it complicated. We have an objection.
Okay, just one more time, Cindy, can you read it as it now reads?
Yeah, I'll read the full two paragraphs. So events shared by the commission should be in line with Oh, that one got changed too?
We have to change it, yeah. Okay.
So events chaired by the commission shall be in line with the commission's values statement, must reasonably provide access, ADA compliant or beyond, be equitable and inclusive, and support a broad diversity of voices and perspectives. Events shall be nonpartisan in nature and historically accurate. The America 250 CT Commission may accept, reject, or reconsider a listing or partnership request in its sole discretion. Groups and organizations seeking to have an event promoted by the commission shall be required to submit a description of the proposed event, the audience served, and how the event addresses one or more of the goals or action steps in the commission's strategic plan. Please submit an event at least 6 weeks before it is scheduled to begin. And all events will be reviewed by a subset of members of the America 250 CT Commission, and then it links to where agendas and minutes are shared.
Okay, any further discussion? Changes, amendments, comments? Thanks, all right. If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the events approvals criteria. Thank you. Deborah and Emrys. Seconds, okay, got that? All in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? All right, it is passed. The events approvals criteria are accepted. Wonderful, that's great. All right, moving on. So per the discussions we've had in this committee and beyond, we started planning for the ultimate event for the commemoration, which will be, of course, in July of 2026. And so a small group of us got together and started talking about what that would look like based on all the information we've gotten so far and how we would start planning for that, because that requires a lot of work. And this will be the signature event of this commission. It also helps when I'm going out seeking resources for the commission, because you have something that's tangible at the end of it that people can get behind. So we came up with the celebration, which we're calling the Connecticut Summer Celebration for 2026. And we tried to incorporate a lot of the ideas. The fundamental one being, how can we provide an event that every town and person in Connecticut can get involved in? So we came up with an idea, which is that we would have, besides the obligatory parade and fireworks and all that sort of thing, an event in Hartford, because Hartford is the capital city. You know, we also have a kind of another event in the city of New Haven, recognizing that there were actually two capitals originally, but also that, you know, we need to try to include as many areas of the state as possible. But the main one will be in Hartford. And we came up with this idea of a recommitment ceremony. Remember, we talked about this at a couple of the meetings where some towns have already gone ahead and come up with a vote to recommit to the ideals of the Constitution. And so we are going to have an event that will include potentially every town in the state. And it would be an event in Bushnell Park, where every town could have a table showcasing whatever they're doing in their town around this event. And so that way we thought, you know, by that time, hopefully we will have a contingent from every town, something in every town, and they can choose to come up to Hartford for the day and have a table, and people would come and see what's going on all around the state. We already have quite a few towns that have responded to our request for a contact person or a committee in their towns. So I think that's going to be the way we portray this, as a really local event. And that this would be the culmination of all that work going on in the towns. So that's first of all. And we would have a ceremony, probably right here. We haven't figured out exactly how to work that, but right here in the old State House, which is of course the most iconic building in the state, where a representative from every town could come and recommit to the values of the the founding documents. So that, then that we'd have what we're calling a Connecticut 250th Expo, which would be the space in Bushnell Park, and it would be a full day with live music performances, probably some poetry readings and that sort of thing, all revolving around this theme of the Constitution and, as David was saying, a narrative about this history. And I think we would focus on this idea of narrative. So, and we'd be able to showcase cultural highlights from around the state, and we would also include all the various locations around the state. For example, the Old State House, of course, Wadsworth Athenaeum, the ancient burial grounds, the Butler McCook House. There's lots of historic sites right here within walking distance. So maybe we'd create a little pathway or trail or something like that. We've been trying to do that for years, some sort of Connecticut trail around Hartford, including the Capitol and so forth. We would also have on Saturday, so that would all be on Saturday, July 4th. On the following day in New Haven, we'd have something similar, but, probably,
This is the whole summer celebration. This is the send off at the end of the summer.
Oh, that's right, yes. Yes, that's right, this is September, that's right. I was thinking we did it the next day, I was overwhelmed already. Like, how are we gonna do this?
Collective faces of dismay.
Yeah, like that next day. Yes, that's right. I should have Jason explain all this because we were together, putting all this together. And again, it would be similar, but we would have it Saturday, September 5th in New Haven. So it'd be what we're calling a summer send-off. And again, a parade, a cultural expo, organizations throughout this is more focused on the organizations throughout the state as opposed to the towns. The one in Hartford is focused on local activity. This one would be focused on organizations who would be invited to share performances, anything they'd like to share about their activities of their organizations. And of course, that would be on the New Haven Green, and we have things down there like Discovering Amistad, the Yale Art Gallery, New Haven Museum would be encouraged to host their activities as well on the same day so that people could go visit the sites as well. And then of course you have fireworks at night. So, and of course, there are all kinds of other things that we would like to plug into that summer. There have been some activities funded by the legislature in the last year. For example, Summer at the Museum. That was that one thing that, maybe you could talk about some of these things because you guys there's a lot of ideas. And of course, we can add to these. This is really a first draft of an idea that we had. But for example, the Great Connecticut Sleepover. I think that was Cindy's suggestion. Was that yours?
Not war shower.
Yeah.
That sounds like
That war shower, that's right. Who else?
For those listening and those who haven't heard, this is a riff off of the George Washington Slept Here.
Yes, right.
So
That's right.
we're turning it into a big tourism event, thinking statewide and how we can promote tourism.
Right. Yeah, we're trying to plug into some of the ongoing events. Like the Rochambeau Trail is still under construction. There's lots of activities around that particular effort. And these are things that we could collaborate with other organizations like Consume History. That was another idea where we collaborate with the Restaurant Association and come up with modern takes on historic recipes, for example. We had a little example of that here at the Old State House. I remember we're doing it again this year, right, Sally? The election cake contest, which I was, unfortunately, one of the judges. I hate judging things like that because I love them all. But they always told me in politics, never judge a contest. There are a lot of disappointed people and one who's happy. But anyway, it was great. It brought a lot of attention to the Old State House and to elections, which is very important. So, and it's happening again this year, right? When is it, Sally? Oh. Yep, just before the election, so stay tuned. But that's the idea, is we had this historic election cake that was baked in Connecticut, the recipe for which is not exactly to modern taste, shall we say, but we riffed off of that and came up with all these wonderful bakers around the state came up with these great cakes. So that's sort of the same idea. We have the Freedom Trail, which is another effort going on, so we would kind of center some activities around that. So these are just some ideas that we threw out there that would be ongoing during that summer, and we can start planning now. And, you know, those of you working on subcommittees, be thinking of how that fits into the work you're doing. So I would invite anyone and everyone to come up with more ideas for us, but that's the basic framework. And I'd like to have something that I can go to funders who might be interested in helping us fund these events and, of course, the work of the commission. So that's why we're trying to get this on the table sooner rather than later.
And if I can just add, you know, while we center the sort of beginning and culminating events in Hartford and New Haven, this does not include participation of any Connecticut town or city. In fact, we really want to encourage that. And that's what we want to sort of set up in the Hartford event is what will communities do, every community do, so that they can promote what's happening and what they're planning. So this is our sort of our first brush at this, but we really would like to hear back from all of you. Is this the right tone? Is this something to grow from, build from, or do we need to sort of go back to reimagine?
Just a reflection on recommitment, and it's inspired by a conversation that I've been having with Melvette Hill, who I think is on the call, who is my colleague at the commission. But the idea of recommitment, our democracy is us, and what we're recommitting to is each other. And the notion of that notion, I think, is rooted in how far we've come as well as a nation. Who was allowed to commit to each other then, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant men of means, is very different from who can commit to each other now. And I would love for that commitment to each other to be reflected on the day as well. The diversity of the state and the diversity of what we all bring to this state, which is so powerful.
Absolutely, and that is certainly the spirit in which this was developed. Yeah, so thank you, Steve, for that. And well, we have lots of time to design that exact ceremony, but I think it will be important. I really think I like the idea of, you know, some commitment, collective commitment to these ideas, whatever those ideas are, however we express them. So anyway.
I have just a reflection, which I think this is great. And I see it's the Connecticut Summer Celebration. I just keep thinking about the whole year. Like, I feel like maybe by releasing this, we maybe lose the opportunity to actually have the whole year be very meaningful from a state perspective. And I keep thinking about, there's lots of things that go on. You know, there's first nights in multiple cities. I don't know what it looks like, but I feel like this is 2 months of 12 months of the year, and just a thing to think about is maybe, you know, saying that we're having a kickoff event on July 4th, I'm like, oh, 6 months. Like, we have to wait 6 months to do something as a state. So maybe there's a thing we can do to actually kick off the year.
Yeah, I love this concept. This is a very important point. And I also picked up on this kickoff and send-off thing. It just seems like unnecessarily bounding when it's just the anniversary. And you know this, but of course, September 5th is Labor Day weekend. And so this could be described not as like the end of summer, but it could either be the Great Connecticut Barbecue, or it could be the work of democracy. Like, you can pick up Labor Day in its various meanings, but like, you don't have to call it the end. You can just call it Labor Day.
Yeah. I like that.
Which allows you to build out, very importantly, as Liz says, some things that start earlier.
So I think these are great cornerstone events, but maybe there's two more cornerstone events, one at the very beginning of the year. What?
There are 4 corners. No, I'm agreeing with you. Yeah, because you said there should be 2 more.
I'm getting to 4.
Yeah, exactly. I'm agreeing with you.
I am at the Shippo's office. I get it. But yeah, like one at the beginning, and then really one that is like, you know, we've recommitted, and this is what the future looks like, something like that.
And our first night? would that be a good time to, you know, we're already doing fireworks and stuff like that. I don't know.
More fireworks is always good.
Always good.
Fireworks are always good, yeah.
Every month has, I think, a vessel.
Well, that's
or
absolutely
250 right?
100%.
Yeah.
I was thinking that too in the description. It's saying towns can share their plans to commemorate, but by that time it's already July 4.
Yeah.
And I think there
People
are probably
made their
things
plans,
they've
like,
already made their
people know
plans.
where they're
Things
going
may have
already
already been
for the
happening. We've been talking about some of the commemorations in various locations may have not even have been in 1776. It may have been in the time leading up to it. So I love the idea of these celebrations, but making sure people understand it doesn't necessarily have to be on these specific dates.
You could call them town pavilions, like in the spirit of a, you know, yeah. So every town just has like its spot that it can present. They'll know to present their 250th stuff, but whatever they want to do.
Yeah, I keep thinking about the word exposition.
Yeah, well, exposition, right? Pavilion would go with exposition. I'm thinking about like a biennale or whatever.
No, what is it, the Centennial in 1876? What the hell was
The Centennial?
The Centennial
Exposition, yeah. The semi-quincentennial exposition. By the way, this is the pettiest thing, but I would love to see all of the town pavilions laid out vaguely geographically. So you can go find them. You can like go walk to the northwest corner.
And he knows people. He will take care of that.
So, in understanding that this first event is about government entities and respecting tribal sovereignty, maybe it could be listed as towns and tribes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Good idea. Yep.
And then I also wonder if for these two events in particular, if there's the possibility for increasing participation and connectivity, having free public transportation from anywhere in the state to the events.
Yeah, we should have. It'd be great. I find myself wondering that you say this because from my experience trotting around the state for so many years, I went frequently to Waterbury has an ethnic celebration every year, and every ethnicity in the city has a table with their food. And I'm wondering if we could incorporate that somehow into this, because we have so many different ethnicities in our state. I mean, and it would be a great opportunity to kind of weave that in somehow. I don't know how exactly,
The
but
picnic idea for the Labor Day weekend, you know?
yes, yeah, Labor Day weekend is working in that work thing. Yeah, that's great. But I mean, maybe we incorporate that into who can have tables at these things somehow. You know, that's probably part of a lot of city. I mean, I think of New Britain with the Polish community, for example. It's a really incredible example of, you know, the diversity of the state. I don't know how it fits in, but I'm just thinking, you know, maybe that's somewhere. Yeah.
I'd like to double down on my own pavilion idea because it gives people something to do. Towns that are not quite sure what to do,
Right.
they can plan their pavilion for July.
Yeah.
And it's something we can invite them to do.
Yeah.
And which they can, you know, you can present any your foods, or you can present your connection to George Washington, do whatever you want.
Or
But
you
this
could
is your
have the
space.
kids in the town could design
Yes,
something about
any-
the history of the town.
Exactly.
I mean, there's a lot you can do.
But that would be a nice sort of local project. You know, we're
Yes.
having a meeting to design the Holland Pavilion.
Yeah, right. I like that.
And there's nothing that says the pavilion has to be just for that one day in Hartford. Of course
not.
No, right, it can be
Right.
movable and reused and repurposed.
Yeah.
I'm so pleased with the turn the conversation has taken, because since the beginning of this one, I was just trying to think of a suggestion. I was like, it seemed to me that fairs or something, agricultural fairs and, you know, town fairs and regional fairs and 4-H fairs are things that are happening throughout the summer and into the fall. And I think that either, you know, so it's just nice to see the things coalescing around a kind of fair-styled idea with, you know, town pavilions or what have you. But I think we might also think not just for 2026, but for in the lead up, if the commission wants to have booths at fairs in different parts of the state as a part of the run-up, because I think that captures a different audience than would be captured necessarily by these very urban events that are kind of listed on this sheet. And I think it moves it out into the rural parts of the state in a way that would be very effective and also personally satisfying to me as someone who researched this stuff
I
historically.
think that's a great idea, Ambrose. Yeah. Yes, Steve.
And doing that gives the person who says, well, what can I do? Doesn't something like that answer that question? You can help out at that fair that day. right? And I think also this might be a way, you know, the dilemma of how to get kids involved.
Yes.
This is one way to do that as well.
Yep. Yeah, I know some young people that are involved in these reenactment things, and, you know, there's something, we could have somebody at a booth, you know, the kids could come to these booths. Yeah, that's great. We can do a lot with that.
Yeah, and I mean, like, if you activated 4-H, like, you could really tap into
Yes.
some of the agricultural history of the state. You could work with Our Farm, and, you know, there are a lot of organizational connections that you could make there.
And it sounds like that can happen sooner rather than.
Right, yeah. It could be a part of our publicity leading up, you know, for the commission to have, you know, a booth at various ag fairs. There's like a whole consortium of the ag fairs, and they put out a rack card every year, so everybody has like the dates and locations, so we could utilize that as a means of public. I'm gonna add this to our action plan.
Yes, that's great. Being a former politician, I can tell you there's a lot of fairs out there.
Oh, yeah.
Daffodils.
Cultivating democracy.
Apples.
I'm all about
That's
that.
my theme. Sure. Cultivating.
Yeah.
Growing.
Yeah.
Farmers markets, right, yeah. There's a lot of those too.
I'm just gonna reflect too, as it happens to resonate. This past weekend, I went to the Nathan Hale Homestead in Coventry, and George Washington slept there. So that was part of the tour. And you know, we were talking before about recipes from back in the day that we may not necessarily do. They had, they were demonstrating with roasted pumpkins that had apples and pears in them. And my point is that if it was resonating with me is that, oh, we're just going to celebrate in the summer versus celebrating throughout the year. And we have such wonderful destinations and landmarks, including Mystic Seaport and other areas. And maybe there's a way throughout the year that the commission can highlight some of these or spotlight some of these particular places that resonate from that era, that are still of historical significance, that people can go to. And they had a farmer's market there as well. So it's just something to think about as we engage. That's not a municipal organization that's has its own historical location, but it would be interesting to maybe pepper throughout the year different sort of spotlights that we can do at these types of locations.
Yeah.
I was also thinking, as somebody who loves to like check things off and prove that I've completed things, if we had a passport or pin, something like that, where people could say, I was in Bolton, I was in Coventry, and I think that may be something that kids might enjoy, or it's a way to share and continue experiencing the event too.
And those locations too get some benefit, not only from the attendance, but the businesses nearby. And, you know, if you go to Newtown, you're going to go to lunch in Newtown. So, yeah, absolutely. There is a segment of the population that loves that participatory.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
I'm thinking of the fourth corner of Liz's Four Corners. If we have New Year's, is it Thanksgiving? Is that? I'm trying to think of what is like late enough in the fall that it encompasses the full year.
Thanksgiving, I guess.
I think we have to be careful about
I mean, we have to be careful about Thanksgiving, but I'm trying to think of what. It seems like we have a lot of ideas for these other things, but we haven't figured out how to get into the winter. So I'm. Except farmers markets, Connecticut was the provision state for supplying the Continental Army, so that's another way of describing that. But I think, but if we want to do something, I mean, I think the point is very well taken that we want to have a tent pole event that takes us into the winter, and it can't be December 31st because I guess it could be December 30th. Could it be New Year's again, like first night again, the next 250? I don't know, but if we have.
I actually don't hate that.
That's better than I usually do.
Y'all know me.
I'm getting that,
I
Leah.
the other one either, but like that is not that. I do like. I kind of like that.
Andy Horowitz, not bad. Liz Shapiro, don't hate it. It's my personal blurb. Yeah.
That gets back to where you began.
Yeah.
Why are we putting bookends on this? We don't need to. So yeah, I think ending it with the next 250 is what
It's starting it.
But I
It's
think
starting.
we can also look at the successes of what we can sort of reflect on from 2026 and move those things forward.
What about a time capsule? What if we make a time capsule of stuff capturing this moment in history where we are, some past parts of history, and ceremoniously
I like
put it
time
over by the charter oak tree, maybe have it in there.
Frozen ground. Dig the hole earlier.
Common ground.
I like that idea.
Right. Should we dig the hole right in the middle of the old State House? Maybe not. Huh? All right, great ideas. All right, I should mention there is a plan afoot to have, I think we've already discussed this, in March of '24, there will be this large conference, which started as a teacher and student conference and is now kind of morphing into a 3 or 4 day event where one day will be dedicated to organizations who are involved in the celebration. And I think the 4th day, we now added on a 4th day, I think. So that I see is sort of a kickoff to everything. And it's growing into that. And I think March of '24 is doable. So there will be extended activities all during this time. So it's not like we're starting in '26, just so we kind of think through that whole thing. Yes, Steve?
Denise, we've discussed the first 3 days. Could you discuss the 4th day in more detail?
Yeah, I think that's supposed to be later in the
Oh,
agenda.
I'm sorry.
is it?
Then don't do it till later.
No, oh, maybe we're not. No, we were just going to talk about it a little bit. Yeah, the Social Studies Summit, March 13th to 16th. We could talk about that a little bit now. It is not an activity of the commission directly. It is this is Matt Warschauer's brainchild, and it's going to be at Central Connecticut State, during the spring break. And it is being funded, however, partially, at least, by the Humanities Council. Maybe, Jason, you want to talk about this? I think we should, kind of just weave that into your thinking about timing.
You're giving me a heart attack here, too.
You're putting me on the spot.
They can have the heart attack now.
So yes, we've had some conversations with Matt and with the Connecticut Council for the Social Studies to bring about a broader conversation about freedoms. And Matt has put together a schedule of events that will involve students, educators. I don't have everything in front of me, so that's why I'm leaning on Cindy here. But the goal is to really bring about the Social Studies Summit so that we can really reconnect the educational ecosystem with civics education.
Right. And I would stress again, this is not an activity of the commission, but in a way, because you need so much lead time to talk to teachers and students, we've been looking at this at least, and I will participate as a speaker. We're going to try to get, some of our public leaders to speak at the conference. So, but it's not specifically an activity of the commission, a la our former conversation. So it's just something I think everyone should be aware of. And Steve, you've been in on these conversations.
The only thing why I'm asking is, he is not, forget it, I'll just say one word. He has not asked Connecticut Council to support this 4th day. So that's why I was only asking what it was. That's my only question. And maybe we don't know yet.
Oh, well, stay tuned. There will be more information later about the exact logistics of all this, but I know he has reserved these dates in particular because, like I say, you need a lot of lead time to do work with students and teachers. And so I think it's a great idea. And it's planned for students on one day, teachers on another day. And now we're starting to talk about, having some of the organizations that are interested in collaborating on all this on a 3rd day. So it's just something we should be aware of.
And that's also during Civic Learning Week. National Civic Learning
Oh, is it?
Week.
Great.
I don't know if that was on purpose or...
No, this is scheduled with the college break, so that they can have the facility, for that week, so. Okay.
But yes, we'd like to think we were that.
Of course, we were conscious.
Now it was.
Yes. No, right. I didn't know about that myself. All right, so moving on now. We're going to get to the meat of the meeting, which is the subcommittee action plans. So as you know, for months now, your various subcommittees and committees have been meeting And we have a few of the plans today before us for our discussion. So we are going to start with the Community and Organizational Engagement Committee, and that's Amherst.
Hi, everybody. What would you like me to give an outline or just basically invite feedback? I don't know how we want to use these 25 minutes.
Well,
you probably need to be brief, so.
Yeah, brief. A brief overview,
Sure.
I guess I'd say, of the plan.
Great. I think we've done some great work, and I want to thank all the members of the subcommittee for their great ideas and brainstorming and revision and refinement, especially over the past month, to bring this plan into shape. Essentially, I think in the broad strokes, we have two main goals. One is to promote this expansive and inclusive sense of the commission, and then to encourage community-based activities that reflect that inclusive sense. So those are kind of the two halves of the plan. In terms of the action steps, some of the things are work that the commission has already completed in one way or another, but we have in particular been focused on coming up with mechanisms for encouraging continued feedback from groups and communities around the state, creating ways for organizations to become involved, ways of fielding inquiries and input from the community, developing probably in collaboration with some of the other subcommittees, some language and kind of elevator speeches about what the commission is doing that all of us can utilize in our work out in the community. Moving into our second goal, really to do some broad outreach, some of which has already begun, to engage the widest possible audience in the work of the commission, and make sure that that organizations have resources to begin doing the work that they want to do, whether that's through sharing some of the toolkits and resources or kind of coming up with kind of out-of-the-box events or guidance that people can utilize. One of the things that came out in our last meeting and that we added to our plan, which is just kind of a forward-thinking thing, is thinking about the best way. Obviously, what we're doing is an important sort of historical moment in and of itself. And, so I think we'd like to think with the rest of the commission about what are the best ways, in addition to, sort of the records retention that we're already doing as a commission, to document the commission's work out in the community and ensure that that becomes a historical record for future generations, whether this is through working with the, the state library or whatever. So this is a conversation I think is a little bit newer to our action plan, but I think it will be important for everyone on the commission to think about. And I don't know if any folks from the subcommittee want to share more about highlights, or if anybody has any questions or suggestions.
Anybody? I think the group did a nice job of incorporating a lot of the things we've been talking about. I mean, especially, we're encouraging inclusive events. You've really done a good job of talking about, accessibility for the programs and the places that people will be going, how to engage, tribal leaders, Black and Hispanic Caucus, faith leaders, you've got a real broad view here. So congratulations. I think it's really well done.
Thanks. I thank my team for all of that. It's really been a common effort. And, I think that one of the things that we're really committed to staying nimble and responsive. I think that's really critical, for the commission as a whole, but especially for our subcommittee. And so we're going to continually adjust the work that we're doing to ensure that we're engaging the widest possible audience.
Great, and I would encourage commission members, if you have any concerns, comments, things you want to see added to this, even if you're not on the subcommittee, to just submit them to Cindy and we can bring them to the subcommittee for you. Because I'm sure, people have ideas as we go along. Those things are going to occur to people, so. Okay.
Say Amherst should not sell herself short. We are all talkers. She actually took what we talked about and made it into a cohesive statement. So much appreciated.
Doug had a lot of work to do on that too, kind of bringing.
All Amherst, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, thank you to all of you. I'm sure you all played a role. That's great. Okay, we'll move now to the governance committee. We've already heard of some of the work, but Ariane, you want to?
Well, basically, like we talked about, the bylaws have really been the true focal point and really the main thing that we've been tasked with overall. So aside from that, we're also asked to put together and submit the annual reports to the governor's office.
Right.
So I think, we haven't really talked about additional items for us, but as Cindy and I were speaking, I thought perhaps we could offer support to Connecticut Humanities in some way. I had a couple of ideas, and I don't know if they make sense, but also I think what we wanted to do today was just open it up to you guys to see how the governance subcommittee could support your efforts. And this doesn't need to be, decided today, but as you're kind of going through your own work, if there are items you think, or areas you think we can assist with, and otherwise I think we'll kind of regroup in our next meeting and talk about it more.
Yeah, because the next report to the governor is in January, I believe. Yeah, so that'll be something else which will come under the governance subcommittee. So, okay, thank you, Ariane. Yes, Steve.
Education does have a report to give you whenever you're ready.
Oh, okay.
You had to give it, Cindy, you got ours yesterday. Yeah, the problem, and I apologize, but I thought it was good to get a co-chair, and I got Bilal Sakau from the University of Hartford, who has agreed to be our co-chair, and we couldn't meet for logistical reasons till Monday, so I didn't want to submit something till I'd run it by him, so thus the late submission to you folks. My apologies. But just some ideas that we came up with, and this is our action plan. We initially, as an education subcommittee, were thinking very broadly, and many of the members of the subcommittee still feel that way, that they would see education in the broadest sense. But I think the realistic, and Bilal agreed, that probably we keep this to a K university level, that we not try to get education. I mean, we thought we could get education to the larger community, but we thought that a more manageable thing is a K to university. We have no interest in creating lesson plans. Teachers do not want lesson plans. What we thought would be good, grade appropriate and age appropriate, that we will let schools and school districts and universities know, A, events that are happening in their area that students of all ages might take part in. B, not lesson plans, but just resources, teaching resources, primary sources, and some ideas on how they might use primary sources. That we thought would be the right, rather than, because nobody's going to want more than that. If we give them that, the teachers are smart enough to do that. We would also insist, and we realize that we have a little work to do, that the resources we provide provide diverse perspectives. And the resources we provide, we thought, wanted to do two things. If there's schools and teachers that just want to do celebratory stuff, we will provide them the resources to do that. But we're hopeful that schools and school districts also explore the meaning of those founding documents and how they played out over time, how they've been challenged over time. And we thought we'd provide sort of a pathway if you want to do that at your age level as well. The thing that we're really wrestling with, and this is how do we want to provide opportunities, desperately want to provide opportunities for student voice. That how can students be involved in this? Would there be specific student-based activities? On this one, we're a little more sort of unsure of how that might look. I mean, Matt's idea of the first 2 days of his thing is largely a student-based thing. That's kind of, but we were thinking in a larger sense, how can we get students involved and engaged and let them have a say, let them give their opinions, and we're still wrestling with that a little bit. So that's where we are with education.
Thank you, Steve. So I guess what we can do is make available the plan once is it written down? I mean, there is an actual plan, or is it still draft?
It's a draft that we're going to, we have a committee meeting on November 2. We're going to present it to our committee meeting, our subcommittee for approval at that time.
Okay, great, thank you. Any questions for Steve, any comments?
I have comments and a question. So in reflecting a bit on David's conversation or discussion earlier, thinking about kids being really recentering kids and there are, not to be cliche about this, but they are the future. I mean, we have to engage them. And so we have been having, Steve, Sally, Connecticut Humanities, been having conversations around reinvigorating red, white, and blue schools in the Secretary's office as well. And so as we do that, Steve, I wonder if you can maybe talk, or Steve, Sally, if you could maybe talk a little bit about that, but also I think the work of the commission and this subcommittee in particular needs to be thinking about, and please comment on this, needs to be thinking about the structures of education in the state that involve boards of ed, superintendents, principals, and decision makers, and how do we get this sort of, these programs and students engaged in these programs in the schools. Because local control sort of rules everything in Connecticut, it's a real challenge. I think we all recognize that. We also recognize the importance of civics education. And so, we're exploring grants and different kinds of funding to bring about more student engagement in red, white, and blue schools. But what might that look like and how might that be supported through the commission?
Sure. Well, the theme certainly of the red, white, and blue schools would be that year, and perhaps in the year or two leading up to it. The theme of the whole thing. And by the way, for those that don't know, red, white, and blue schools is a recognition program for schools or districts that do exemplary work in civic education. And it can be awarded to, it's not awarded to an individual kid. It's awarded to either schools or school districts that do a good job. There's a theme every year. It's co-sponsored, by the way, by the Secretary of State's office, by the Democracy Center, and by the State Department of Ed. So this is a window into this, I think, and maybe the best window into this. Because it's not creating a new structure. Right. How do we get this into schools? Oh my God, how do we do it? If we already have this structure in place, why not use the structure? And I would say that few, if any, teachers would have, hey, this is the theme for the next 3 years. Nobody's going to complain about that. So I think this is the window. As far as Jason getting school districts, I mean, red, white, and blue is not a program that I've ever heard that many objections to. I've heard some people on, you've heard some on the year.
Illinois has a very similar program, but it's much larger because it's been going for many years and they have a lot of money supporting it. It's very well resourced, millions of dollars. And it's been very successful. We, as someone who designed this program, frankly, myself and a former commissioner of education who was a social studies teacher, Diane, that's exactly what we were trying to address, is this issue of having, I ran many student programs over many years ago and have faced this question over and over again because the schools are already overwhelmed with what they're already teaching. And so how do you make it an experience that affects enough students? Many of these competition programs just don't affect that many kids. And so that's why we designed it as a whole school recognition program, similar to one that was run years ago. The Blue Ribbon Schools has attempted to do that. There used to be something called Green Schools, and the school would bring in speakers, Ray Cycle, I remember from years ago, and that sort of thing. So that's why we designed it as a whole school activity, where the school could do a number of different things, primarily, hopefully, at the elementary school level. That's been the other challenge, is that really teaching about history and civics has largely disappeared from elementary schools in particular. So I agree that Red, White, and Blue Schools has tremendous potential, but we haven't been able to get enough schools involved because I think mostly they don't know about it. It's even for Steve, who's the consultant at the Department of Education, it's difficult to get attention to anything like this, right, Steve? I mean,
Yeah, but I do think that when superintendents and school leaders are aware of 220 of the 250, I think even the most skeptical superintendent will see, hey, this is something we should be part of.
Exactly.
So I
The
think
theme
this
is
is
gonna
the,
make
this
the
is the
difference.
thing. I think no superintendent's, we don't have to be involved. I think it'll be the opposite.
I'll say this year, we really doubled down in efforts in promoting. One of our kind of slight alterations to the program for this year was to broaden it beyond social studies and history teachers and classes, so that it's really making people think about civics as something that is everywhere in all aspects of life. And so we've really been advertising and promoting it to all teachers in all disciplines and encouraging them to work together. So then that also helps lessen the burden of one teacher or one class. And then we've also encouraged them to work outside of the school. So with, on our kickoff webinar, we had a representative from the Boys and Girls Club, for example, so after school clubs or other types of youth community organizations. So I think, looking at it kind of more broadly and then promoting it more broadly will help get the word out more.
Absolutely. That's how it was originally designed, but did you get more schools participating this year?
Well, we don't know yet.
That's right. Timing, yeah. Interesting. All
I will
right.
repeat, we've never pitched this to superintendents, but this year I think as we get closer to this, I think that's another pitch group that we haven't done before that we would certainly want to do. So Red, White, and Blue as the sort of conduit to get out information, if it's a theme, to get out information on, again, not telling teachers what to teach, but hey, if you're teaching 5th grade and you want to teach this, here are available resources. Here's a couple pathways to go. That's as far, I would recommend that's as far as you go. No, nothing.
I was, as I was listening to you, I was thinking about, it just occurred to me, we have the kid governor and we have things like Model UN. So what if we had a kid general assembly and, we have all our districts and we have our capital over here. Maybe there's some way to get that sort of engagement and representation from each of the different districts, and maybe through some scholarship or something, or have some dedicated day where they could all meet at the Capitol when it's out of session and, sit in the seats and have some sort of session.
Yeah. My dad ran an education program for the New York State Legislature for many years. It was for college students and postgraduate students, but the work of that was to, they would shadow legislators, and then there would be a model legislative session at the end, and everyone would propose their legislation. They would be in the Senate chamber, in the state capitol doing those things. So you could scale that down for a younger, it's certainly not unprecedented.
Yeah, no, we have that program here in Connecticut too. Yeah, but you'd have, yes, make it for younger children, yeah.
That's a great idea.
It is, yeah, I like it.
Have that as maybe a kid culminating event or something like that, you know?
I don't want to put Sally on the spot, but we talked a little bit about something like this in terms of you have this sort of executive branch piece.
Yeah.
Thinking about the judicial branch with civics first, but then also, you know, sort of a legislative program for youth along those lines.
I think that's a good idea. And there was sort of a pilot this year with older students, bringing them into the Capitol to do a mock General Assembly. So there is a start on that idea, not necessarily for younger kids, but I think it's good for any age group. So I think, you know, what we found with Kid Governor is that the more authentic the experience is, the more the teachers are going to be interested, and the more the students are going to be interested, and the more they'll learn. So that authenticity really needs to be at the heart of anything that we do. So actually being at the Capitol is a really great thing, and meeting with legislators and people who are nonpartisan people working at the Capitol is really important.
I think, sorry, you know, one thing that I think, you know, recognizing the collaborations we've had working, and I know Sally and Steve working with the Democracy and Dialogues Initiative out of UConn, it's been really important to sort of foster an environment, as a dialogic environment where people can talk across difference and work through that and not look at people pointing and yelling, you know. It's more of a constructive discourse where it seems to be absent in our national dialogue, and seeing this and bringing it into our public spaces, and especially with youth-based programs. I think even if we don't have a formal program, I know you're running programs with Democracy and Dialogues that's aimed at younger students, but I think it's really important to build those skills.
There is, I forgot both phones, so I can't look it up, but there is a program, I know that is who runs it though? It's not run by the state, it is a youth congress or something?
Yeah.
Is that right? Because it happens in Connecticut. I know my son went from the Groton Public School District when he was a sophomore and junior. And it was extremely authentic.
Yes.
Model UN too.
It wasn't Model UN, but it was.
There was a youth congress, and I don't know if that's still in operation.
Oh, yes, I think it is. Representative Bob Godfrey was the godfather of this program, and he's very, very possessive about it. So I'm sure he wouldn't let it go.
I know this one was run by, I was surprised at who ran it when my son was in. Like, I was like, oh, this is what you do? And I don't remember what it was called. I'll ask my son.
I can't either.
I just have two small ideas in the service of trying to knit these different pieces together. One is the great idea to have resources that teachers can use. They should be in the Connecticut Humanities database and of resources, and they should just be pulled out so it looks like a sub-collection of what Connecticut Humanities has gathered. So those are the same thing, and maybe the kids' legislature, one of their projects can be to draft a resolution that will be read on July 4th, and the other events, but they can be building towards something else we're already doing.
Yeah.
Or I was thinking along those same lines, you know, because we were thinking about whatever it was at the end of the year that could prefigure the next, you know, 250 years. Like, you know, if there are bills that you know, could be introduced, or, you know, other kinds of resolutions that could be created that could frame that, you know, going forward, it would be great if that were coming from the youth.
This is excellent, just to the extent that these things fit to, you know, are not 1,000 islands, but are actually somehow speak to each other.
Right.
Jason, I also might think that state legislatures would want to ensure that in their own districts activities hang on to. That could be another pressure point.
Okay. Lots of good ideas. Yeah. So we'll just assume that the education plan will be published on the website or wherever,
Right after
the internal document.
November 2nd.
November 2nd.
We'll get it.
Okay, great. All right, thank you, everyone. moving on, the last report we have, I think, is from Marketing and Tourism.
I'm going to fill in for
Oh,
Rob.
yeah, Rob
Pratt.
isn't here, yeah, that's
I have
right.
the Rob hat on right now.
Okay.
And just very briefly, Frank Burns from the Connecticut Tourism Coalition will serve as a co-chair of the subcommittee. That brings together sort of a broader collaboration that we've had working relationship with them in the Connecticut Arts Alliance and Connecticut Humanities. Frank's engagement in the tourism field connects us with a number of key industry leaders, and then also our collaboration with Anthony and the Office of Marketing and Tourism. So we have their full engagement and buy-in in thinking through this. You saw Joe's presentation that's been done in collaboration with the Office of Marketing and Tourism. And just to lay out very quickly, since we now have their buy-in, it's been an exciting process through which our goals now are to unify all of America 250 Connecticut efforts across Connecticut with unified look and feel, promoting all of the second goal being to promote the entirety of Connecticut, America 250 Connecticut experiences, and centralizing a hub of activity that will be through ConnecticutVisit.com. And then a third goal being to use the 250th as an economic driver, engaging organizations throughout the state, including chambers of commerce, tourism districts, and nonprofit, for-profit businesses. Actually, a goal to elevate and promote visibility of historical and cultural sites within the state. So tourism has been a great collaborator. They're thinking about how to market and promote Connecticut outside of the state as well as inside of the state. And we don't want to lose sight of heritage tourism that we should all be thinking about and collaborating around. So that's just a quick overview.
Sally?
I had one question when I was reading through it. It has some really good tools and ideas for going forward, but I was wondering if there had been a discussion about how they're going to position Connecticut as something different from all of the other 29 states who are also going to be promoting the 250th. Do we have a narrative or?
Yeah, so what just came out, and I'll be really, I think, as concise as I can be, and I wish Anthony was here, but one of the things that to me is exciting about the new rebranding is around sort of centering Connecticut around makers, innovators, and entrepreneurs. And I think, that brings us to our history of sort of thinking ideals, ideas and ideals that, not just contribute to the sort of collective idea of what Connecticut is in the democratic process, but also through our industry writ large. So we can take that in a number of directions, I think, which...
I can piggyback on that a little bit. And I think really the interesting thing about the rebranding effort is that it's really heavily focused on the arts and cultural sector and positioning Connecticut as a place to come and experience those things, not that the tact is not, we're not New York or we're not Massachusetts, it's we are Connecticut, and you might not know, but here are all the cool things. So there's no apologies for not being New York or Boston anymore. It is and the brand is really, really fluid. So I think, in my opinion, since I've lived in the state, it's the marketing for the state that is the most dependent on the cultural aspects of the state and the way that Connecticut comes together that makes us different, but it's constantly evolving. So I think that to think of this marketing campaign as like a thing that's done is not the way to think about it, and I know that's how we've thought we've all thought about that, the campaigns in the state for the last 30 years. This is like an evolving campaign. So there's food parts of it, there's art, there's strong arts component, there's a strong heritage component. So I think that it's not there, but the discussion is like totally open and happening all the time. And we're gonna learn a lot in the next 6 to 12 months about what is working and what isn't, and then take all of that and put it into what starts to happen in 2025 to really prep for 2026. I think it's really hard for those of us who've worked in this sector in Connecticut for a long time to even imagine how different this could be, but I'm really optimistic about it.
So we're no longer filling negative space.
Right, we're not like the state that wasn't. We're like the state to come to. So it's really a whole different approach. No apologies. That's why I said that's like one of the slogans. No apologies. We're Connecticut.
I have to confess, the only marketing branding I remember was Still Revolutionary. Remember that one? Yeah. So, and that's kind of ironic given what we're discussing here, but yeah. So this is far broader than that.
It can be used and adapted, and I think what you saw for the 250th, the logo that we saw is just like, that's just the beginning. The CT logo that can be, you can fill that space with anything you want, and you can actually go outside the lines or change. So if you've seen some of all of the sort of sample things that are out there, it's astonishing how actually creative that logo can be, and it can be in any color. I mean, you can do a ton with it, and that's just sort of the visual component. But there's there's much more color and life that I think is coming, and sort of changeability, that's not really a good word, but that will come through in this campaign than is maybe coming through in this initial rollout that people have been seeing. So,
and it's really meant for any organization, any community to sort of
take it, merchandise it, use it. I mean, it works really well. Like, take your image, take the old State House, put it inside, have the dome sticking out, and throw it on a tote bag. It's your logo to use. And I don't want to make light of that, but I think that's a really critical component of it. Like, everybody is included in this particular Connecticut ... logo.
Great. Wow. Yeah, Steve.
Is the logo, when will that officially be available?
It's out.
Oh, it's
it
out.
launched
So
yesterday, and so
whatever
you can get the press kit. The kit is, the governor released it, so you can find it in multiple places. And I will do the explanation next time.
Okay, that's great. So we're off and running. Thank you all for the work you're doing on these subcommittees. It's very important, and I'm so glad we now have a real blueprint in a lot of these areas, and that's very exciting. So, okay, well, mindful of the time, I think we'll move on. That was the only other report we had from the subcommittees, and now we have a few minutes for public comment. Anybody? Public behind us. The public behind us, yes.
Just stand here if it works.
Yes, come find a seat.
I'm George Slate from Windsor, Connecticut's first town.
Okay.
I have some comments about that. But for you guys, from what you're talking about, don't forget for July 4th, 2026, the Connecticut Convention Center is right over there, plenty of space. Is that your backup plan for Bushnell Park location, or however else you're going to use it? Okay, on to Windsor. For the last 18 months or so, I've made appearances at Town Council, Board of Ed, Human Relations Commission about, in 10 years, 2023, we celebrate our 400th anniversary. And the question is, what are we celebrating? The annihilation of the people who lived at the convergence of the Connecticut and Farmington Rivers, or, as our town seal says, the first English settlement in Connecticut. And there's lots of gradations in between the two. And the only conversation I've had with, I believe the name is Bruce Bokum, two dogs from Mohegan tribe. What I take away from that was he said, yeah, in our tribe, there are various opinions. And I like that notion. In high school, I ran track and cross country. For track, there are relay races. So if you are the first leg, the second leg historically should be Windsor and Wethersfield for our 400s. Then 2 years later, you have Connecticut has its 400th. And the other leg between the two of them is the US's 300th, or Connecticut's, Windsor's, and whatnot, 500th. Because how things will evolve between now and then, nobody knows. And I'm more concerned about that evolution than I am about setting goals. I belong to a congregational church, and as someone said, I'm comfortable with the journey. I don't need the answer church. But people have different religions. The crazy thoughts I had to focus on the word celebration is, in listening to public radio, my younger daughter calls me an NPR airhead, that I didn't realize the importance or the essential element that Connecticut through New London played in the slave trade. Would you celebrate that? No, you would comprehend that, or some other word, but you can deal with it. And evidently in Windsor and the state, the burning of witches in Windsor, or witches in Windsor, has been dealt with, and it's time to move forward. So that's where my mind works. The crazy notion that I had when I'm sitting here is, and I don't want to break up over this, but I have never heard Merrick Garland talk about the country without going back to his parents and how they were received during the war. So the weird comment is, for the country's 250th, what the hell are we about? And so the crazy things, and I'm not a marketing person, in the next 250 hours, someone should call Mayor Adams and say, we will take 250 people, 4 to 6 busloads. And between now and July 4th, 2026, we will take on 250 buses. That, to me, is what this country is about. Not everything you're discussing, and I give you credit, I understand. But if you look at the essence of the country, bringing them here, welcoming them here, is what we're about. That's it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Yes.
Stand here, Alice Ridgway, the GL Committee. I love public comment because while you're all talking, so I'll just say, as you think about bringing all the towns together on Independence Day, please know that we are planning things in our towns for Independence Day. So it's going to be hard to be like, sorry folks, I gotta go, or find somebody willing to leave our commemorations and celebrations. So just gonna put that out there. Also, and I emailed Andy and Liz already about this, markers. We have a lot of old markers in the town, obviously a historic town, some of which were placed in 1935. We don't know by whom. We say it's the state and they're in bad shape. But we also want to place new markers. So there's an entity called the William Pomeroy Foundation, with lots of money, partnering with states to create state-specific markers. And we have Legends and Lore in Connecticut, and we have Hometown Heritage, and I think the DAR has a marker as well. But if the commission wants to have sort of uniform markers around the state, that's something we would encourage.
Thank you. We have talked about that, yeah.
Okay, that's all.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Hi, Joy Zach. I'm the Economic Development Director in Wethersfield, the oldest town. We have to with each other. I saw Patrick McMahon yesterday at another event, and we were going back and forth. But I just want to thank you guys for everything you're doing to help organize this. Our Heritage Commission is very engaged in celebrating this, and it's kind of the precursor or staging area for our 400. And thank you for some of the ideas today too to engage our schools. We're trying to think of ways to bring curriculum without dictating curriculum. And I love some of the ideas that came forward today, the kid legislature, things like that, to engage them and help them understand how government works in different levels. And I'm thinking like a kid town council would be fun, you know, for a couple days.
An hour. Be careful what you wish for.
But it might give them a different look at how social media impacts life. But I want to thank you, and I look forward to engaging and working with the commission and getting some of the resources to move us forward. We already have a committee ready to go, so we're looking to go. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I should mention that we did a site visit in Weathersfield. It was quite wonderful, and they are doing great work. They're very unified already. They already had a committee at work on some of this, so kudos to you guys. You're doing a great job. We visited that house, the Stevens, Webb Dean Stevens house, which is a great site.
Yeah, it's amazing the history there.
Yeah, wonderful visit. We are doing that, some of us. We're going to some of the sites around the state. We'll continue to do that to try to get some attention both to the sites and to the work of the commission. So anybody have any ideas about wanting to come along with us or identifying a place that, you know, we have a list, I know, and we're working our way down. So just so you're aware, if you want to participate, would be great.
Let Cindy know if you do.
Yes, let Cindy know if you're available, if selected. Okay, great.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Sylvester Salcido from Orange, Connecticut, the most fruitful town. I just feel obligated to make a mention of Orange since everybody else has something first in Connecticut. And quite frankly, I don't know what Orange is first. I guess we're first in manufacturing Pez candy. But I do want to echo my fellow members here in the peanut gallery of the public table to thank all of you. I just found out about this group. I think I was just sort of, 2 o'clock in the morning looking through the internet, and I saw this thing about 200 USA, Connecticut, and I was enthralled and captivated. So thank you very much for the work you do, and thank you for welcoming us. I half expected to be really locked out of the door there because I was looking through the website and I didn't see that sign that says public welcome. So again, I took a lot of notes because I'm kind of dangerous. I'm a former attorney who's now retired and who doesn't like to play golf. So I spend my time driving around Connecticut like this. But I look forward to the next meeting, and maybe whatever little piece I can contribute, I'd love to be able to share it with all of all of us across the state. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Make me stand up. I'm Lee McFadden. I'm the state vice regent for the Daughters of the American Revolution, but I also wear different hats. I'm also the state chair for America 250. So I communicate to all of our chapters around the state about plans being made in this commission and encourage them to go to their towns and start setting up committees if they haven't done that yet. My other hat in DAR is that I'm the chair of the Governor Jonathan Trumbull House, which is on the list for a site visit, and I hope to see you all there. We are re-envisioning the house with the help of Connecticut Humanities grant and the Hugh Trumbull Adams Town Fund, which is giving us the matching money for that. And we're in the second year of a 3-year process to do the reinterpretation, and it's including doing research in the slaves that the governor owned and his relationship with indigenous people, so that we can expand the story of the house to include everyone that was in the house. So I really hope to see you during that visit.
Yes. Look forward to it. Thank you very much. Wonderful. Anyone else? Last call. Thank you. And we are taking notes on all this. We're noting your presence, putting you on the list. to receive
Can I
information.
take
Oh,
off
yes.
my commission hat and put on my public hat for a second?
Yes.
And that is, I am a member of the W3R, which is the Washington Rochambeau Trail. It is a national trail. My office is representative to that. The trail has suffered from a non-collaborative leader for a long time who left about 2 years ago, and the trail has been leaderless in Connecticut. If anybody, I don't have the capacity to do it, but happy to help anybody along. If anybody is willing to or knows somebody who is willing to be the head for that Connecticut's portion of the trail, please let me know, because we would love to have some excellent leadership, especially going into the 250th. It would be a real miss.
I might have an idea for you. We'll talk.
Excellent. Okay, please.
Cindy, is there anybody online from the public? Okay. Thank you.
Okay. That completes the agenda and the work of the commission, this quarterly meeting. So without further ado, do I have a motion to adjourn? So moved.
Second.
Okay. Thank you all very much. We'll see you in the next quarter. I think the next meeting is, we didn't. Are we supposed to
Yeah,
talk
I
about
think we have.
Yes, January 7th.
Yeah, we're supposed, next meeting, January 17th. Okay, yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, great. Thank you, everyone.
Kathy, I'm just gonna dump. You want me to go without you?